Film noir has been a staple of cinema since the 1940s and 50s with its dark and suspenseful themes and unique visual style. However, as the film industry evolved, so did the genre. Neo-noir films emerged in the 1940s and 50s, and since then, they have become a popular subgenre of crime and thriller films. In this video, we will take a closer look at the evolution of noir film.
You lead some life, huh, Rocky?
Yeah. I'm a real dinger.
One of the key characteristics of noir films was the portrayal of the dark side of humanity. These films often featured morally ambiguous characters who were involved in criminal activity or were struggling with their own demons. The plots were typically complex and layered, with twists and turns that kept audiences on the edge of their seat. They were also known for their unique visual style, which included the use of low-key lighting, deep shadows, and dramatic camera angles. The use of low-key lighting was another hallmark of noir film. This lighting style created deep shadows and dramatic contrasts, which added to the overall mood and atmosphere of the films. It also helped to create a sense of tension and unease, which was a common theme in many noir films. In addition to the lighting, the use of dramatic camera angles was also a defining characteristic of noir films. These angles helped to create a sense of visual interest and excitement and often emphasized the stark contrast between light and shadow. Finally, the characters in noir films were often complex and multidimensional. They were not simply heroes or villains, but instead were often portrayed as flawed individuals who were struggling with their own inner demon. This added to the overall depth and complexity of the films and helped to make them more engaging for audiences. Some of the most iconic noir films from this era include Double Indemnity, The Maltese Falcon, and The Big Sleep. These films set the standard for the genre and have continued to influence filmmakers to this day. In the 1960s and 70s, a new wave of filmmakers began to experiment with the classic elements of noir films and created a new style of filmmaking known as neo-noir. These filmmakers were heavily influenced by the classic noir films of the past, but they also wanted to put their own stamp on the genre and reflect the changing social and cultural climate of the time. One of the key differences between noir films and neo-noir films was the themes they explored. While noir films often focused on individual moral struggles and the dark side of humanity, neo-noir films tackle larger social issues such as political corruption, social inequality, and identity crisis. These films also often featured more complex and nuanced characters who were not simply good or bad, but rather struggled with their own moral ambiguities and personal demons. Another defining characteristic of neo-noir films was their visual style. While noir films used low-key lighting and dramatic camera angles to create a sense of tension and unease, neo-noir films often featured a more modern and stylized visual approach. This included the use of neon lights, urban landscapes, and futuristic settings to create a distinctive and visually striking atmosphere. Some of the most famous neo-noir films include Chinatown, Blade Runner, and LA Confidential. These films have become classics in their own right and have helped to define the neo-noir genre. Overall, neo-noir films represent a new and exciting chapter in the history of the noir genre. So, what led to the emergence of neo-noir films? One of the major factors was the changing social landscape. The 1960s and 70s were a time of great social upheaval, with protests and demonstrations against the Vietnam War, civil rights, and feminist movement. This led to a change in the way that people saw the world, and this was reflected in the films that were being made. Another major factor was the rise of a new generation of filmmakers. These were directors who had grown up watching the classic noir films and were now putting their own stamp on the genre. They were interested in exploring more complex themes and creating characters that were more multidimensional than the classic noir characters. In conclusion, the discovery of neo-noir films was a natural evolution of the noir genre. It reflected the changing social landscape and the emergence of a new generation of filmmakers who were interested in exploring more complex themes. Neo-noir films continue to be a popular genre today and have influenced many contemporary filmmakers.